My best friend and I have been arguing more lately. Whenever I try to point out flaws in their logic, they just dig in further and get more stubborn, even when I have facts on my side. While trying to find a solution to this, I read about something called backfire effect. And is that what's going on psychologically? How can I communicate more effectively in this situation? It is a tendency of some people to resist accepting evidence that conflicts with their beliefs. When they have conflicting information, they even become more convinced of their original beliefs than before and questioning them. Okay. Um, yeah, we've all experienced that. Um, but let me unpack some of the dynamics behind that. There's a process that Piaget first coined called assimilation and accommodation. It's how cognitive. Piaget was an epistemologist before a psychologist, and language and how do we know, and all of that. And what he learned that the brain develops this process called assimilation and accommodation. And assimilation, so we have what he called mental structures, which is basically our map of the world. This is what he's referring to as your views in an argument. And we got our map of the ways that we see things. Well, assimilation means that when new data comes in that conflicts with our map, they were able to, first of all, let it in. Just let it in, assimilate it into your world of data. Now, once it gets in, then you have to wrestle with it and make room for that, accommodate it in your views. Sometimes that means changing your views. Sometimes it means not necessarily changing your views, but at least accommodating the fact that other people see it this way and why, and accommodating a better way to work with conflicting views. Sometimes all the way from finding a third path that's neither just the strict path of either of you, to dialogue that changes one of your views, all the way to sometimes even, now that I really get it, I have to protect myself from these people in various ways, various contexts. You're never going to believe what the burglar believes that's breaking into your house, that this is a good idea. And you're not going to convince them through assimilation and accommodation. You have to go into protection mode. But short of that, we like to be in dialogue and get as far as we can. So what happens that you're referring to here is sometimes, and I would, first of all, look to yourself. Sometimes we are creating an energy in a conversation that creates a backfire effect because why? Because we fired. All right. When you're coming at somebody else, what Harvard called a difficult conversation, which is basically three elements. Number one, the stakes are high on what you're talking about. Number two, the emotions are high about this topic. And number three, you have different perspectives. If you have those three factors, you have what's called a difficult conversation. And we have to take care of all three of them. Now, the first one is that the stakes are high. I would go into this discussion with your friend if there's, here's some suggestions. You can do this with a teenager, you can do it with a spouse, you can do it with a boss, you can do it with a customer. But it's very, very important. Start with number one, do you understand the stakes for them? Why this matters to them? I've gotten into these political discussions with people. I was talking with somebody the other night. He said, how can you be friends with that person that's got this view or whatever? And I said, well, it's a different view than mine, but because I know them. So what do you mean? I said, because I've listened enough to understand what it means to them, why they hold that view. Because you're not going to get to somebody's head if their heart's blocking the door. So if you want to get over a backfire effect, let's not fire. Let's put down the weapon and let's listen first. But not just listening to their view, but going past that to understand the stakes. What's at stake for them that this view at the moment is their only solution to what matters to them. You know, a lot of discussions, you can go to any of the, even the political hot buttons. If you take poverty, or you take the border, or you take education, or you take, you know, taking care of old people, to everything, and people fight over their positions. Sometimes you sit down with somebody and you realize, you know, we care about the same thing. We both care about educating kids. We both care about, you know, people needing to have better opportunity and wanting them to be in this country. We both care about poverty. It seems like we're on the same page with what we want. It seems like where we differ is we have different solutions for that. And then it goes down a whole different path. You can understand the whys better than the stakes. And the second thing is that there's strong emotions. If you don't hear people's emotions first, you don't hear why your teenager's so upset about this and what it means to them emotionally, then you're probably not going to get to or get past the backfire effect. And speaking of backfires with teenagers, there's sometimes other people who feel controlled. They're not even arguing for their position anymore. They're arguing to be free from the way we're trying to control them. So that's a big deal. So you got to hear it, the emotions. And then the third thing is you have different perspectives. If you can preface that, so, you know, it seems like, I mean, I hear you and I agree. I understand why this is hard. I need for you to hear me too. And kind of what it means to me and why this. And you're going to find points that you align. And then you're going to also, at that point, have a much better shot at what is the reason that you've come to your conclusion and what is the reason they've come to theirs in terms of the actual position that you're holding. And that makes for a much better fertile land to have these discussions. You find this around, you know, the old, when I was a kid, this is before the great divide of the country that we have now. When I was a kid, you know, I think it's my mother used to say, well, don't try to talk about politics or religion when you go over there. Stay away from those two. Well, welcome to today, right? But these are things that we must have conversations about. And so remember, to get a backfire, they're using us to be an initial fire, number one. Number two, sometimes there is no fire at all. You just bring up a topic. Somebody's already on a rant. Their hair catches on fire. I've got a very close friend that has a particular political position that if it ever comes up, I just say, I can't discuss this with you. This is one of my best friends. I can't discuss this with you. He goes, why? I said, because when this topic comes up, you go away. This other person emerges that is an emotional thinker. The guy I know is rational, and you can have different perspectives. When you get into this, you just go into nuclear mode. So let's not talk about this. I mean, there's sometimes, you know, you can address that. Maybe it gets better. You can address it. Maybe, you know, there's some things we probably shouldn't talk about. It doesn't really help. Doesn't go anywhere. We talked about it. You know, let's go play golf, right? And then sometimes you realize that you wave the white flag. I don't believe in, well, I'm never going to change their mind without trying or being open to my mind being changed. God, there's a lot of views I have in life that I wish were not true. I really wish, but they've been come to in experience, and I've learned. Some things we come to. I give it easy one. Every beginning therapist wants to be loving and kind, but you treat enough addicts. And it's not many years in your growth as a therapist that you come to a conclusion that you don't like. And I wish I didn't have to, but experience brought me there, that you can't talk to a wet brain. If you don't have some limits and boundaries that bring about a forced choice for somebody to do something about their addiction, you're not going to get very far. And so sometimes we even get to the place where we can't even talk about this until you do A or B. So somewhere in all of that, there's probably some kind of answer.